Before we continue with the video, if you like what I'm doing here on this channel, please consider subscribing. It helps the channel a lot. Anyway, let's get back to the video. Welcome. In this episode, we're going to do something a little bit different. We are going to be dissecting a project to try and learn from it. And the project in question is going to be Lyra, the starter game released by Epic, which you can find if you just go to the free section here under Epic Games Content or just searching for Lyra. And what we're going to be doing is essentially we're going to be taking a while to dissect a little bit of the game and see how you can approach learning from a sample project like this. Because not everybody knows how they can they get a project and they go like, wow, cool, I can maybe take some asset here or there or something like that. But if you really want to understand something, then you might need to really go into the nitty-gritty details to get some kind of appreciation for how things are done and how they're connected, and learn that way. So that's what we will be doing today. And this will be a part one. If it is a popular thing and people like it a lot, maybe we'll do more episodes of this series so we can delve into even more of the Lyra project. But anyway, let's jump into it. So here we have the Lyra project started, and you can see that we immediately get started in on a level here. We have a few different start locations here. We have some text here for some information for a player that's loading in if they want to change some settings. We can see that we have a very rudimentary essentially a lobby level here. We can see that we have some icons here representing different things like sphere reflection, skylights, and directional light and such things. But also we notice that we have something called an experience list 3D. So let's go and start up the game and see what we can observe. So starting off, you can see that we get this character, a pawn that is very simply put together. We can see that we have 6 different types of teleporters in front of us that we can interact with. And that's all that we can currently see on this level. So how can we approach learning from this? Well, the first thing we can do is we notice that the teleporters are spawning here, but we can't actually see any teleporters here. So why is that? Well, we do see that there's an object here, right? A B experience list 3D. And we can click over here to edit that blueprint. This will bring us to the graph of this blueprint, which has a begin play. So it will be doing something when it's spawned into the world. And you can see that we have quite a bit of things to do here. So a good start here might be to just put a breakpoint in the begin play. So we'll just right click and add a breakpoint. We'll go back to the level editor and we play again. And you can see that we end up in our code here. So the very first thing that we seem to be doing is we're taking an array here and we're clearing it. This is the first time we're actually playing this, is going to be clear regardless, but this seems to be something that's repeating. Other than that, it seems to be going through another array here saying that we should append something from additional experiences to show to this other array called user facing experience list. And both of these are empty, so nothing here is really happening. The next step here is we're getting a primary asset ID list, and it's called Lyra user facing experience definition. Okay, so first thing off here. A primary asset is something that I have dealt with in another tutorial. So if you want to learn about data assets, I'll provide a link so you can go and read up on that if that is of interest. But here is the first part of something that might be interesting to us. So we have a primary asset ID list here called Lyra user facing experience. So let's stop for now and go to our project settings. In our project settings, we have something called the asset manager. And here you can define primary asset types. So if we condense these, you can see that we seem to have 8 different primary asset types to scan here that are set up currently in the project. You can see that they have been categorized as map, Lyra game data, primary asset label, game feature data, Lyra experience definition, Lyra user facing experience definition, Lyra lobby background, and Lyra experience action set. Now, if you remember, if we go back to our code here, you can see that we are looking for something called Lyra user facing experience definition. And in our project settings, we can find that here under the 5th index. So in here you can see we have a bit of information. We have a primary asset type, and you can sort of see this as groupings essentially, because you see we have an asset base class here. So this will be a class that the data assets will be building upon essentially. And we may want to check out the base class here, because the base class is the only part here where I can see that seems to be something interesting. So we have a browse to asset in content browser here, so let's click on that. We can see that nothing really happens here. We're still in the original all folder of the project, and this is most likely because this specific asset base class here is not a primary data asset that's created inside of Blueprints, but instead in C++, so it's not available in the directory to view in such a way. However, that roadblock doesn't need to stop us for long, because even though we can't see this specific class, we can probably deduce that the other data assets, then, if you're familiar with data assets, will be building upon this type. So Lyra user facing, for example, if we were to go and put ourselves in the all folder here and type in Lyra user, and here you can see we get 6 results here. And if we go back to our project settings, we can see no, we see no such information. Okay, so here we can see we have 6 different things. And why are these appearing? We searched for Lyra user and none of these are called Lyra user. Well, if we hover over one of them, we can see that the native class for these ones are Lyra game.Lyra user facing experience definition, which is exactly what we were looking for as a base class over here. So our search can still detect that these belong to what we're searching for, because they are inheriting from that primary data asset essentially. So here we can see we have a bunch of different things. We can see we have a control point, a playlist, a TDM, a front end, a shooter gym, and an arena explode. What might these things be? Well, first thing that we might just immediately identify is that there's 6 of them. And if we play our game and we just resume, remember we found 6 portals. So this could be hanging together. Let's see if that is correct. So by going play it again, we go to our begin play. We can now continue through this code further. We can see we're getting this primary asset ID list. We're going through it. We see that we get a primary asset ID list back. This one consists of 3 different elements. Sorry, 6 elements. Reading is hard. Anyway, so in the debugger here, we can now expand these and see what kind of information are we getting here. We can see that the primary data asset is the Lyra user facing experience definition, what we were searching for. We can also see that this specific primary asset name has a name that matches the 6 things that we found. It's TDM, control point, front end, example playlist, explode, and shooter gym. The only difference is that they're in a different order than we saw them earlier. Okay, so that's essentially what we're loading out here. So that's okay then. So we essentially have 6 data assets here. We're saying asynchronously load these data assets. Okay, so that's fine. So doing that, we should have, and since we have a time clock here, we know that this will take its time and report after in the completed whenever it's done with whatever it did. And we can see that it has now loaded these 6 assets, which are these 6 data assets. Then it will go through each of these and it will cast them to a Lyra user facing experience definition, which is the primary data asset that we found earlier. So going through that, we can see that it's doing this so that it can get hold of some common information on this one. One of the things it wants to know is if the in front end boolean is set. And if we go in here, we can actually go and see show in front end, and it's set to true. Then after that, it wants to see is default experience boolean, and we can see that as well here. Is default experience boolean true? So it will go through true for both of these. So that's what it does. If it would happen to be false on either of these, it will do a slightly different check here. So what we can see here is we have a array here of user-facing experience list, which is essentially just inserting this class reference that we have casted over here. And that is what it seems to be doing in each loop here. So we can go and say, well, okay, that seems fine. Let's see what happens after that. So we'll resume. We now come to the part of completed of the loop here, and we now know that this array over here, user-facing experience list, has been populated by 6 items, the 6 items that we had, because they were all set to true for both of these checks. So we have that one built. So user-facing experience list is the same list that we have over here, although the chevron here is slightly covering it up. And then we apparently want to loop through these. And why do we want to do that? Well, it seems like we want to spawn an actor of B teleport to user-facing experience. Okay, what kind of a class could that be? We see that, among other things, it is taking one of these user experiences as an input. So let's click on the magnifying glass to see where it is in the project. It will be grayed out because we're currently in debug mode. So let's stop debug mode and open up this class. Inside of this class, we can see on the event graph, we have 3 different events currently. Looking at these events, if we zoom in, we can see that we have a begin play. We have a event actor begin overlap. The last event we have is a load into experience. So a good point to start here might be to add breakpoints to all of these events to see if we're going to be encountering them. The begin play one seems to be the most logical place where we will actually run into some kind of action. So let's start playing again. We get to the begin play, we resume to our loop, and then we move over here. And now if we step over to the next one here, we should end up on our begin play, I think. So here we go, we end up in a begin play. We get to our sequence, we're going to be doing some things apparently over here and some things over here. So let's see what we do here. The first thing we seem to be doing here is we're getting a widget component, which is the one over here. We're getting the actual widget that's assigned in here. So in this case, it's going to be a widget 3D pass-through, it seems. No, that's the material, sorry. There, W experience tile is what's in here. And that's what we're actually casting to here to be able to then send information to set user facing experience. Okay, so this might be a good other object to explore. So let's stop over here. So this user interface widget we can probably find if we look in the content folder. We see that we have a UI folder over here. Although we don't see what we're looking for immediately here, and there seems to be a lot of folders, so it might be difficult to find. So what we can do is we can go back here and see W experience tile is what we're looking for. So let's type that in while we're standing on the UI folder. W experience, and you see we have 3 results here. One that says experience list, one experience selection screen, and one experience tile. So this is the one that we're after. And we might want to right click and click show in folder view. That means we will get the actual hierarchy structure to where it is actually located. And then we can open it up. Opening it up, this is what we're presented with when it comes to the designer. And if we click on the graph, you can see that we have some different variables here, some input, some events. So we have some information here. So going back to the teleport user interface, the teleport user facing experience, we can see that we're sending in user experience to load, this variable over here, which is exposed, which means that this was loaded in when we created this class, which if we go back to our experience list 3D is this information that's being sent in here. So it's the looping element that's sent in here, which is then being sent in to this specific widget. So in this widget, there's something called set user facing experience, and this happens to be this function here. We can see the function over here, set user facing experience, and it has as an input something called new experience, which is matching what we found over here. So it's sending in this primary data asset class so that we can get some information from it. So it's getting things like tile button, tile title, tile description, and tile icons and stuff like that. And you might be wondering, well, what are these? If we go back to our folder again here and we searched for Lyra Lyra user, I think, and we got these results. Now, all of these are data assets. You can see that by the naming convention they have chosen here by DA. If we open up one of these, you can see that we have a bunch of information. You can see these sort of as pre-generated structs essentially. So here we have configured what one experience should be like. We have a map that it should be playing in. We have a experience ID class that it's pointing to. We can have some other things like some titles and information and a title icon and some settings like how many players are supposed to be here, as well as a loading screen widget. So you configure each of the different game modes in this way and just read it essentially. So that's what we're doing here. We're just sending the information that we want to display in the widget into this information, and then we just update the tile text, which is going to be setting all of this information. It's just grouping it into a nicer way. Sorry, that's not what I meant to do. Let's see here. Okay, so it's in the Lyra button base now. Let's go back to our experience tile, and then it updates some tile art here. So okay, so we can see essentially what it's going to be doing here. It's just sending this information to have something to represent it visually. After that, we have a delay, and then we're setting tick mode to be disabled on this widget. So that's what we're doing. Next step is we're going over here and we're checking user-facing experience to load again, which is our input in this class. We're checking if it is a default experience, whatever that's supposed to mean in this context, we don't really know yet. And then essentially we're saying we should set some color parameters for our NS gunpad. Our NS gunpad we can see as a component over here. We can see that it is a Niagara system asset, that's why it's prefixed with NS as in Niagara system. So we can see that this here will be driving a gunpad color. It will be driving the parameter that's called gunpad color with a certain color. So let's get back to debugging again and see what we actually encounter now. So we go back here, we resume like before. We know that we're going to be going in and creating these spawned actors. We can remove this breakpoint and we can step out. So we see that we then add it to an experience portal array over here once we've spawned it. And then we see that the completion node here is actually vacant. So we're not actually doing anything else. So everything here is just related to getting a spawn transform, location and rotation for the actor that we're actually spawning here. So clicking resume, we can now see that this is what we have managed to do. So these different widgets that exist here now, they have been configured by the data assets and been loaded in, and we have seen how that has gone by. And that is a pretty good start. We're starting to get a basic understanding of how the lobby is created and what it is doing and where it is getting the information from. I think that might be a good place to stop for now. If you found this useful, please let me know, because I'm not sure if this is something that people find valuable and educational or not. It's just something new I'm trying out because it felt like this might be an area where we could use some more content essentially to learn. Anyway, I think that's all for now. Hopefully you found this video helpful. If you liked the video, leave a like. If you did not like it, leave a dislike. Leave any suggestions or comments you have down below. Subscribe and share this video if you want to see more like it in the future. That is all for now. Keep on learning. Take care.